She had survived bombs, hunger, and the kind of childhood that steals the dreams right out of a child's hands. And now, at 91, Sophia Loren is finally breaking a silence she has kept for decades, revealing the truth about the Hollywood star who shaped one of the most unexpected, most shocking chapters of her life, George Peppard. And what she reveals is nothing like the polished Hollywood tale the world thinks it knows. Sophia Loren, born Sophia Villani Ciccolone on September 20th, 1934, entered the world in Rome and grew up in the poverty-stricken town of Pozzuoli, near Naples. Her childhood didn't sparkle with the glamour people would later associate with her name. Instead, it was carved out of scarcity, fear, and the constant shadow of World War II. She spent her nights huddled in bomb shelters, listening to explosions shake the earth. Her days were a battle with hunger, with exhaustion, with a world that demanded survival before it allowed dreaming. And yet, in the middle of that war-torn landscape, something remarkable, almost impossible, was forming. Even as a young girl, Sophia's beauty was undeniable, but it wasn't the beauty that made her different. It was her spirit, unyielding, hungry, defiant. Where most children saw nothing but ruins, she somehow looked beyond them, imagining a future no one around her could even picture. Those early wounds didn't weaken her. They hardened her. They sharpened her. They built the fire the world would one day see blazing across movie screens. And that same fire, born in bomb shelters and raised in rubble, would eventually lead her straight into the heart of Hollywood and into the orbit of George Peppard, the man she is only now choosing to speak about, a man whose connection to her life was far deeper, far more complicated, and far more unexpected than anyone ever imagined. Most people think they know Sophia Loren, the glamorous, legendary icon whose name alone sparks images of elegance, grace, and timeless beauty. But almost no one knows the real moment that changed her life forever. And it didn't happen on a glittering red carpet. It didn't happen under the bright lights of a Hollywood studio. It happened in a place far humbler, far more ordinary, yet far more consequential. A small, local beauty contest where a shy, hungry 15-year-old girl stepped forward, trembling with nerves, and unknowingly caught the eye of a man who would completely rewrite her destiny. That man was Carlo Ponti, a film producer whose vision went far beyond mere appearances. When he looked at Sophia, he didn't just see beauty. He saw intelligence glimmering behind her eyes, warmth radiating from her every gesture, and a magnetic spark so rare it couldn't be taught, copied, or ignored. Ponti became more than a mentor. He became her guide into a world she had only dreamed of, slowly introducing her to film roles that nudged her out of the timid shell of adolescence and helped her grow into a bold, captivating presence on screen. What began as a professional partnership quickly evolved into something far deeper, far more dangerous. Their love was forbidden, tested at every turn by legal battles, social scorn, and the relentless gaze of an entire country hungry for scandal. Yet, against all odds, it endured, and in time, they married, sealing a bond that would last more than 50 years until Ponti's passing in 2007. Sophia's rise wasn't merely meteoric, it was explosive. In the 1950s, she set Italian cinema ablaze with unforgettable performances in films like Aida, 1953, and The Gold of Naples, 1954. With every glance, every subtle gesture, every flicker of emotion, she proved she was more than just a pretty face. She was raw, electrifying, and impossible to ignore, a presence that made audiences stop, stare, and feel deeply. Then Hollywood came calling, and with it a whole new world of challenges and triumphs. Suddenly she was sharing the screen with legends, Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, Clark Gable, and Marcello Mastroianni. Yet it was 1961 that would cement her place in cinematic history forever. Her haunting, unforgettable performance in Two Women, directed by Vittorio De Sica, earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. And this wasn't ordinary Oscar. Sophia Loren became the first actor in history to win for a performance in a foreign language film, a triumph that spoke volumes about the power of emotion over words. Her portrayal of Caesira, a mother desperately shielding her daughter from the terrors of war, transcended language. Every heartbeat, every tear, every desperate moment of fear was etched into the audience's soul. Sophia Loren didn't just become a star. She didn't just become a legend. She became timeless. If you ever doubted the power of cinema to both shatter your heart and put it back together, watch Sophia Loren's performance, because it is a masterclass in human suffering and maternal devotion that lingers long after the credits roll.
That moment on screen wasn't just acting. It was the start of a journey that would transform a shy Italian girl into a legend whose name would echo across generations. For Loren, that was only the beginning. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Sophia Loren didn't merely appear in films, she dominated them. Every role she embraced became an event, a statement of power, grace, and emotional truth. In Marriage Italian Style, she brought elegance and fiery passion to the screen. In Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, her humor sparkled like sunlight catching on water. And in Arabesque and The Millionaires, she radiated a charm so magnetic it could captivate audiences across Europe and America alike. She moved through cinema like royalty, unshakable, offering everything she had without ever needing to prove herself. And then there were her legendary collaborations with Marcello Mastroianni, a partnership that would redefine what on-screen chemistry could be. Romance, wit, laughter, and heartbreak all intertwined in performances that felt both intimate and eternal, as if the audience were peering directly into the lives of two real people caught in love and mischief. Loren didn't just inhabit her characters, she radiated. Every gesture, every glance, every pause carried a weight, a dignity, and an authenticity that made even the glitz and glamour around her feel secondary to the raw human truth she conveyed. As the decades rolled on, something extraordinary happened. She didn't fade. Instead, Sophia Loren grew more luminous, more compelling. New generations watched her not just as a star, but as an icon of resilience, passion, and fearless self-expression. In films like 2009, and The Life Ahead, 2020, she proved that her emotional depth and cinematic power had only intensified with time. Age did not diminish her, it enriched her, adding layers of complexity, wisdom, and grace that younger stars could only dream of achieving. The Life Ahead, directed by her son Eduardo Ponti, showcased Loren at her absolute finest. As Madame Rosa, a Holocaust survivor who takes in and protects orphan children, she delivered a performance that was both heart-wrenching and transcendent. Here was Sophia Loren, embodying strength and resilience while simultaneously revealing the tenderest, most vulnerable corners of the human heart. It was the culmination of decades of artistry, experience, and sheer human empathy, all distilled into one unforgettable screen presence. But then, on September 24th, 2023, the world stopped. Reports emerged that Sophia Loren had suffered a serious fall in her home in Switzerland, and for a moment, millions of fans held their breath. The woman who had given so much, who had inspired, dazzled, and moved audiences for over half a century, was suddenly facing a moment of fragility. The story of a life built on strength, elegance, and cinematic brilliance had taken a startling turn, reminding us all that even legends are human. What happened next would stun the entire world, because even a woman who had seemed almost untouchable for decades suddenly found herself face to face with fate. Sophia Loren, the beloved Italian screen legend whose grace and ageless fire had long made her feel immortal, was rushed into emergency care after suffering serious fractures to her hip and femur. It happened quietly, inside her private home near Geneva, yet the shockwaves were instant. Her family panicked, fans held their breath, and within hours a specialized medical team was assembled. Surgeons moved with urgency, united by one goal: protect her mobility, stop the injury from becoming catastrophic, catastrophic and give the icon a fighting chance to rise again. But Sophia Loren's life story has never been defined by tragedy alone. It has always been a tapestry woven with love, devotion, and a romance powerful enough to shift the entire landscape of cinema. And at the center of that love story is the man whose name is forever linked to hers, Carlo Ponti Sr. He wasn't simply the famed producer standing at her side, he was one of the architects of her destiny. Their bond became one of Hollywood's most enduring and magnetic romances, a blend of passion, rebellion, and artistic brilliance in a time when their relationship was considered scandalous by the church, the courts, and even their own country. Their journey began back in 1950, when Sophia, 15 years old, shy, underfed, and still navigating the unpredictable world of small beauty pageants, crossed paths with Ponti, the charismatic producer 22 years her senior. He saw something in her that no one else had recognized yet, a presence carved straight out of legend. Under his mentorship, she slowly stepped out of her shell. He found her roles, refined her talent, and guided her transformation from a timid teenager into a global phenomenon. And what began as guidance, quiet and careful, evolved into something far deeper, a connection fueled by admiration, ambition, and a love that neither of them expected, but both of them needed. Still, the path to becoming a husband and wife was nothing but smooth. Carlo Ponti remained legally married to his first wife, Giuliana Fiastri. In Italy, strict divorce laws made separation almost impossible without sparking public fury and religious backlash. Their love wasn't just judged, it was condemned. But instead of breaking them, every roadblock only fueled their commitment. Every criticism made them hold on tighter. Their relationship became a testament to devotion in its purest form. A love so unshakable that even legal barriers, cultural pressure, and moral scrutiny couldn't tear it apart.
What kind of love survives a scandal, avoided marriage, and even the threat of criminal charges? For Sophia Loren and Carlo Ponti, the answer was startlingly clear. A love so stubborn, so determined, it simply refused to die. Back in 1957, the world gasped as news broke that they had secretly married by proxy in Mexico. No glamorous ceremony, no spotlight, not even their own physical presence. Two lawyers stood in for them while they hid far from the Italian public eye. And the moment this quiet union became public, all hell broke loose. Italy erupted. The marriage wasn't legally recognized. Whispers of bigamy exploded across headlines. And suddenly, the most celebrated couple in Italian cinema was facing a scandal large enough to bury them. By 1962, the marriage was annulled. But instead of tearing them apart, that painful moment became the spark that hardened their resolve. Every legal blockade, every religious threat, every public accusation only pushed them further into each other's arms. Their love didn't fade, it fortified. And then, after nearly a decade of grinding battles and heartache, everything changed. In 1966, Carlo Ponti secured French citizenship. One single life-altering breakthrough. At last, he could legally divorce his first wife. At last, he could marry Sophia in a real ceremony, face to face, without shadows or secrets or shame. Their second marriage wasn't just a legal correction, it was a rebirth. It marked the true beginning of the life they had fought so hard to build. From that moment on, they became unstoppable. Carlo poured his brilliance into producing some of Sophia's most iconic films. Two Women, 1960, which earned her the Academy Award, and Marriage Italian Style, 1964, a masterpiece still celebrated today. Together, they created films that radiated elegance, passion, and the unmistakable magic of Italian cinema. Their marriage lasted more than 40 years, a stretch of loyalty and devotion that outlived countless Hollywood romances. They raised two sons, Carlo Jr., who rose to prominence as an
an orchestra conductor, and Eduardo, who embraced filmmaking, both carrying forward the artistic fire lit by their parents. To the world, they were legends, but to each other, they were simply soulmates. Sophia often said that Carlo believed in her long before she believed in herself, that he shaped her confidence, nurtured her gifts, and helped her transform from a girl living through war and poverty to a woman of extraordinary dignity and global renown. In the end, their love wasn't just a chapter in Hollywood history, it was a triumph. Even all these years after his passing, Carlo Ponti's absence still hangs in the air around Sophia Loren, like a shadow she has learned to live with, but never truly escape. When he died in 2007, the world saw it as the end of a legendary marriage. But for Sophia, it felt like an entire lifetime closing its final page. No award, no international praise, no dazzling performance could ever replace what she lost that day. And yet, with the same elegance that defined her career, she has continued to honor him, speaking of him not with sorrow, but with deep respect, calling him the quiet force who shaped her into the woman and artist the world fell in love with. In the stillness of her private moments, she returns to their shared laughter, the dreams they built brick by brick, and the silent strength that held them together through scandals, triumphs, and unimaginable pressures. Their love story has long stood as one of Hollywood's most enduring legends, a romance not merely fueled by passion, but fortified by trust, creative harmony, and an unshakable devotion that weathered every storm fame could throw at them. And now, at 91, Sophia Loren remains one of the last surviving stars of a world long gone. She is not just a symbol of beauty or talent. She is living history, a woman who carries decades of cinematic evolution in her voice, her memories, and her presence. Over the span of her extraordinary career, she has acted alongside some of the greatest performers to ever step in front of a camera. But there is one name, one presence that has remained tucked away behind her carefully curated stories. George Peppard. For years, she kept their experiences in a quiet corner of her heart, and only now, in these late chapters of her life, does she feel ready to speak, ready to share the admiration she once held for him, the challenges they faced, and the complicated, magnetic energy he brought into every room. With this long-awaited revelation, Sophia opens the door to a part of her journey that has remained untold until now, offering a rare and intimate glimpse into a man and a moment that shaped her in ways the world never knew. George was a mystery I could never quite unravel, Loren begins, her voice low and steady, as if she's carefully peeling back layers of a memory she's held close for decades. He was handsome, incredibly talented, yet there was always something behind his eyes, something restless, something wounded, something always trying, almost fighting to prove itself every second. She drifts back to the early 1960s, to the moment their paths first crossed, a moment frozen in the glow of old Hollywood. Loren was already a global sensation, adored for her unforgettable performances in Two Women, El Cid, and Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow. Peppard, on the other hand, had just exploded into stardom with Breakfast at Tiffany's, instantly labeled one of Hollywood's brightest new leading men. "We met at a dinner in Los Angeles," she recalls, her eyes softening. "He walked in so quietly, almost as if he wanted to disappear into the wall. But when he finally spoke, his voice carried this weight, this authority. You could tell instantly that he had fought hard for every ounce of respect he ever received." Loren describes Peppard as a man carved from another era, his masculinity confident, old-fashioned, magnetic in a way that felt both protective and intimidating. "He knew how to charm," she says, smiling at the memory. "He could sweep a room with a single look. But that pride of his, it was like armor. It kept people out, even the ones who wanted to understand him. When she speaks about their work together, it's with a mixture of admiration admiration and exhaustion. Their professional relationship was built on deep mutual respect, but it was never simple. George took the craft so seriously. Every line, every gesture, every moment. He demanded perfection. There was no such thing as good enough to him. His relentless intensity had a dual effect. On one hand, it was breathtaking. Watching him work was watching a man wrestle with his own genius. On the other, it was draining, an energy that could swallow an entire room. When something didn't go the way he wanted, you could see the frustration wash over his face, and all I could do was smile at him and say, "George, life is not a battlefield." She laughs now, a soft, bittersweet sound. He laughed when I said that, but I don't think he ever believed it. And in that laughter lies the truth of George Peppard, the beautiful contradiction. A man who craved recognition more than anything, yet pushed people away without even realizing it. A man who wanted peace, yet lived as though every moment demanded a fight. That was George, Loren says finally, her voice dropping to a whisper. Brilliant, restless, a man forever searching for something he could never quite name. Hollywood had a name for him, a man with fire in his veins. Fiery, stubborn, relentless. That was the reputation that followed George wherever he went. Everyone knew it, Loren says, her tone steady but touched with something deeper. His perfectionism, that iron-willed streak, it made him brilliant, but it also made life harder for him. She describes it like watching a flame burn too bright. Beautiful, intense, impossible to ignore, yet sometimes consuming the man at the center of it all. Loren remembers how his clashes with studios, his refusal to bend, and his impatience with Hollywood politics cost him chances that could have launched him even higher. While others played the game, George refused. He didn't want to be a pretty face on a poster. He wanted to be treated like a real artist. That stubbornness, she admits, it earned my admiration, but it also closed doors for him. And yet, when she speaks of him, there's no harshness, only warmth, only memory, because behind everything the public thought they knew, there was a softness that only a few ever saw. Between takes, he could be surprisingly gentle. He loved disappearing into books, arguing about politics, diving into anything that touched the human soul. There was nothing shallow about him. His mind never rested. It was always searching, always digging for truth. She pauses then, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, as though confiding a secret. Sometimes, I think he was simply too intelligent for the world he ended up in. Hollywood rewards charm far more than depth. George had charm. He had depth. He had brilliance. But he never seemed to fit inside the glittering machine built around him. And when Loren remembers his later years marked by struggle and silence, something unguarded flickers across her face. It broke my heart to watch the industry turn its back on him. He deserved so much more. There was a moment, a real moment, when he could have stood right beside Brando, beside Newman. He had that level of potential. She exhales gently, the weight of what could have been hanging in the air. He truly did. Hollywood has always been a place of bright lights and carefully crafted illusions, but George Peppard never fully surrendered to that world of masks and performances. Not really. Loren remembers that between takes, when the cameras stopped rolling and the noise faded, he transformed. He became astonishingly gentle, almost disarmingly so, slipping into long, thoughtful conversations about books, politics, and the strange, tangled architecture of the human soul. He wasn't one for small talk. His mind was always reaching, always digging deeper, always searching for something more honest than the blitz around him. With a soft, almost aching voice, Loren reflected, "Sometimes I believe George was simply too intelligent for the world he ended up in. Hollywood rewards charm more than thought, and George had both, effortless charm and razor-sharp intellect, but he never looked comfortable within Hollywood's shimmering pretense. He seemed forever torn between the career he built and the truth he craved." When she spoke of Peppard's later years, Loren's eyes glistened, the weight of memory pressing gently against her words. "It broke my heart watching the industry turn its back on him," she admitted. "He deserved so much more. There was a time when he could have stood shoulder to shoulder with Brando and Newman, but fate had a different idea." She described his battles, his struggles with alcohol, the personal demons that chipped away at the man beneath the star. She traced those struggles back to the same restless fire that once made him mesmerizing on screen. She said, "He needed truth in everything, but truth can cut deep, and he carried that depth, that pain, everywhere he went." When asked what she would say to George Peppard if if he were still alive, Loren smiled, a smile woven with longing, regret, and tenderness. I would tell him he was wonderful, that he didn't need to fight so fiercely. His talent, his heart were already enough. Then, after a long breath, she added, he was a good man, even in the moments he doubted it. Sophia Loren's reflections pull back the curtain on a side of George Peppard the world rarely saw. Her words don't just honor his talent, they reach into the quiet, hidden corners of the man who struggled beneath the weight of it. She said, we came from different worlds, but I always understood him. Beneath the pride, beneath the battles he fought with himself, there was a man who just wanted to be loved. And perhaps, she whispered, that longing, that raw human desire, is exactly what made George Peppard unforgettable.